How is she?
Sleeping. She wasn't fretting at all before she fell asleep. Her fever seems to have lessened. She smiled at me, John, before she fell asleep.
Congress has declared us at war with England. A majority vote of 4.
War?
There are few details in that paper.
There was no dispatch from the government?
It's intercepted, probably. That's dated June 22nd. The country's been at war for 2 months, and I did not know it.
John, what if there's an invasion from Canada, the boys?
England is not likely to lay waste to New England. Just too many friends there.
War. You've said over the months what a tragedy this would be.
Means we must fight for our freedom once again. And if we lose, there will be no United States of America as we know it. And that must not happen. Any sacrifice we're called upon to make, we must accept willingly.
And may God help us.
Mrs. Adams! Mr. Adams! The baby!
John, why must I weep for both of us?
I weep, Louisa. In my way, I weep. Moscow has not fallen.
Not today. But tomorrow the next day, she will be gone. This moment calls for vodka. Those evenings so delightful with the exquisite French wines are now over. No, even their wine would taste bitter. So, my dear old friend, you can understand my depression.
I share it. My country's fortunes are no better than yours. And the irony of our situation is that according to the papers in June, England revoked the orders that allowed them to seize our ships at sea. The very orders that caused us to declare war in the first place. So we are knee-deep into a war that need never have occurred.
Maybe there is a way to stop it now. Russia and England are now allies. Perhaps London could be approached about a negotiated peace.
By whom?
Tsar Alexander. His Imperial Majesty is willing to offer himself as a personal mediator. If both of your governments agree, we could open negotiations immediately.
Sent for the doctor.
Doctors can't do anything for me. All winter, I waited for the summer. Now flowers are growing on her grave. I was there this morning.
Louise, there is some hope. Hope for the war's end, at least. Mr. Gallatin, Mr. Bay, I'd be arriving in St. Petersburg soon to begin the negotiations.
I have not become, John, the wife you expected me to be.
Louisa, you are the wife I want.
The first 2 weeks in St. Petersburg, I enjoyed this view. Now it seems just like our prospect, Mr. Gallatin. Flat. Uneventful.
You Americans expect too much too soon.
You are an American, too, Mr. Gallatin.
I'm an American by choice, European by birth. Europe bred me a defeatist. America has made me an optimist. Who knows, in a few moments he may return with confirmation that the Tsar has already begun negotiations.
Behind our backs.
Oh, the Russians are a curious people. They have an almost oriental need for mystery and intrigue.
The same story. There are technicalities, complications. The Tsar is in the field. Perhaps next week.
So many explanations must conceal one essential fact. What is it?
What in heaven's name are we to do?
Wait! That seems to be our only present occupation.
England has refused Russia as a mediator, but she has agreed to deal directly with us. However, the negotiations must take place on a site congenial to her cause.
England finds Russia unacceptable.
Well, of course, England would. We're in St. Petersburg.
She suggests Sweden or London.
Oh, I came to negotiate a treaty, not a meeting.
The time-consuming delays are calculated to give them advantage.
She hasn't even selected her peace commissioners, although we have sent 2 more of our own. Clearly, England intends to win the war by avoiding the peace.
The dilly-dally. Common diplomatic dance, but cruel, cynical, and deadly to the men on the battlefield.
We must do the unexpected now.
What?
Bad and I will leave here.
Yes.
Try to make contact with the English on our own. We must do it now, before we have nothing to use in the negotiations.
Who's Papa going to be with again?
Mr. Gallatin and Mr. Bayat.
35 kopecks.
John.
Sentiment, Louisa. Sentiment. Charles Francis. While I'm gone, you must do nothing of which your mother would be ashamed to write. Be attentive in your studies and faithful in your devotions. Take care of your mother.
I must discover my strength, John, as you have yours. I know what I face, you do not.
The carriage is ready, sir. Charles Francis. Almighty and merciful God, into thy loving care and watchful keeping I commend my family, both here and in our own country, and pray for a felicitous reunion. In this world or the next, thy will be done. Amen.
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 Good morning, Mr. Adams.
Good morning, Mr. O'Leary.
Gentlemen, we are finally able to begin a discussion of the issues that confront us before tomorrow's first meeting with the British Commission. I trust you all have been enjoying the attractions of the city of Ghent.
Well, hopefully we will spend less time than we did in St. Petersburg.
6 weeks already, Mr. Gallatin. The English moved slowly.
Except on the battlefield. I am sure Mr. Gallatin and Mr. Bayard are as pleased as I am with the President's choice of two such exemplary representatives of our country's interests as Mr. Clay and Mr. Russell.
Yes.
Gentlemen, as you know, we begin this bargaining from an unfortunate position. That is, the war goes on. Now, it seems imperative to me that this commission, when with the British at least, present a united front.
Even when we are, in fact, not united, Mr. Adams?
We will agree on basic principles, I am sure.
Are you indeed?
There are several points upon which we are prepared to conclude the peace. One is obviously that the British cease the impressment of American seamen. Now, in matters in which we must yield, let us be firm that we give nothing away that our country had before this war began.
That word yield bothers me. It has fewer syllables than surrender, but it has the same sound to my ear.
We are in no position to present ultimatum, Mr. Clay.
Let us be sure we do not receive them either.
Yes, that is all of our aim.
What of our Western claims, Mr. Adams? They are my concern.
We will retain the legal right to the region around the Columbia River. We will give up nothing south of the boundary established by the Treaty of 1783.
You speak of what we will not give up. What will we demand from them?
Mr. Monroe has given us one demand at least.
Useless or not.
Yes, a major one, which should please you, Mr. Clay. I've read your speeches favorable to it. We are instructed to make every effort to force the British to cede all of Canada to the United States.
And that will be as easy as leveling my native Alps.
Sir, what of the British commissioners? Has anyone taken measure of them?
The British have sent their ablest diplomats to the Congress of Vienna to settle the Napoleonic Wars, to resolve what the Crown obviously considers a less important problem. We have the gift of less important men. Lord Gambier, head of their delegation, is an Admiralty official of middling rank. Henry Goulburn is a diplomat whose only credentials seem to be that he was not important enough to take to Vienna. And Dr. William Adams, no relation, gentlemen, rest assured, is their technical advisor on matters of law.
We wish to welcome the representatives of the United States. It is His Majesty's and our most serious wish that these meetings prove fruitful and end the current unpleasantness between countries so linked by ancestry, language, and history. Mr. Goulburn.
After due review, His Majesty's government is prepared to deliberate the following points in dispute. Item, impressment. Our official attitude is that this is purely an internal domestic concern, but to prove our willingness to cooperate, we will consider placing it on the agenda at some unspecified appropriate time. Item, a revision of the boundaries between Canada and the United States. Item, to revoke the 1783 agreement permitting American fishing rights in Canadian waters. Item, that the Indian allies of our country, for whom we feel an inordinate responsibility, be granted sufficient land in the Western Territories for the establishment of an independent Indian nation.
Lord Gambier, having heard and noted England's suggestions for the agenda, may I respectfully request an adjournment for 24 hours?
20? Did I hear you correctly, Mr. Adams?
You did, sir. At the end of that time, we will have our thoughts assembled for the deliberations.
And it will take you 24 hours to assemble your thoughts?
It will, sir.
Well, if you truly deem it necessary, the meeting's adjourned.
Another war! That's the answer. Declare war on those supercilious asses all over again.
We're not even holding our own in this one.
They have always wanted the Ohio River to be the Canadian boundary. What of the 100,000 souls that live in that territory now?
Another 100,000 Canadians, that's all.
No! And an Indian nation. That means a British flag flying right in the middle of our continent.
What about the right to fish in the Canadian waters? If we lost those rights, New England would secede from the Union.
And good riddance to them.
Gentlemen. We have been given begrudgingly 24 hours to work out our reply. Your anger will not reduce the severity of the English demands.
Lord Gambier's items were designed to produce this very effect. He needs the 6 weeks it would take us to receive instructions from Washington City.
He won't succeed.
No, sir, he will not. If the British succeed in delaying these negotiations, we may have precious little left to negotiate. And we must work out our answer tonight. We must keep this conference in session. We are frankly astonished that the subject of an Indian territory, or nation if you prefer, is even on the agenda of this commission.
Our government has complete sovereignty over the natives and the territory they occupy, and that is as it must be.
Lord Castlereagh's formula for these negotiations gave no indication that this subject was even to be discussed. Now, there would be no value in going on with it.
It is not unusual under conditions such as these to pursue our conversations and reach a tentative solution. Your commission would then sign a provisional article of agreement, subject, of course, to the ratification of your government.
Our stand on that is equally firm.
The Native American tribes are a matter of great concern to His Majesty.
Were they when we were His Majesty's colony?
His Majesty's benevolence to the Aborigines is well known. Mr. Adams, are you willing to go along with us and work toward a provisional article?
I am not, Your Lordship. We can sign nothing concerning subjects we are not even authorized to discuss.
Perhaps you'd like another adjournment to discuss this with your colleagues?
No, sir. That would be useless. We are united on this subject.
Then leave us no choice but to adjourn these discussions until we can consult with His Majesty's government in London.
His Majesty's Foreign Minister, Lord Castlereagh, visited Ghent during the 3-week adjournment, and he advises us that you must be willing to discuss the Indian question and to sign a provisional article at the conclusion of that subject.
We will not consider an Indian nation west of the Great Lakes. This is insufferable.
Lord Gambier, having heard this much of Lord Castlereagh's demands, may I suggest the advisability of putting the remainder into writing? For our study and deliberation, we will also answer in writing. This will avoid the possibility of any misinterpretation on either side. Perhaps considered reflection will lead to more productive future meetings. Is this agreeable to your lordship?
If it encourages the commission to sober consideration, so be it.
Their answer is not to concede, but to attack. Your government's steady encroachment on the Indian lands, your efforts to obtain Canada by force.
That charge is true, Mr. Adams.
It may be true, but we did not succeed. They're bluffing, that's all. There should be no mention of the territory in the treaties, and no mention of the Indians either.
If we stand firm on that issue, it will mean the ending of this conference. Are we willing to go that far because of the Indian question?
Yes. Everyone in our country would be behind us. The possibility of an Indian nation would inflame our armies, and they'd fight like madmen.
I must vote against ending this conference.
The country was founded at such a terrible cost. You cannot desert her now.
I am not deserting my country. But I am not serving it here either. I shall write the eminent Lord Gambier tonight. I shall request a passport from the British Navy to allow me to return home.
Shall we work on our reply, gentlemen? I do not doubt that our colleague will return.
This communicating by letter is inhuman.
There is no flexibility in pen and ink.
Unless it comes from our ministry in London. This just arrived from Lord Castlereagh. We're ordered not to let the negotiations end. The ministry fears that would fire American patriotism to fight on and eventually weaken us at the Congress of Vienna. If the Americans truly knew the military situation, they'd be on their knees before us. As we speak, our army should be advancing on their capital. I know what I would do with it.
Mr. Adams, 6 weeks ago, only the hand of heaven can help us now.
There will be no American fishing rights to Canadian waters. Phrase it even more strongly if you can, Goulburn.
Mr. Clay, the fishing rights are essential to the economy.
Essential to your beloved New England. It is the British demand for navigational rights to the Mississippi that we should be discussing.
Give up access to the Mississippi and the navigation rights? These colonials are trying to push us off the continent.
We must bend somewhere. Despite Mr. Clay, cannot we trade the navigation rights on the Mississippi for the fishing privileges? Let the British sail to New Orleans after they have paid the proper customs.
No, Dr. Adams, no custom tax. I refuse to consider it. Here, you right. We no longer consider any settlement based on status before the war began. Any settlement must instead be based on what we possess now.
My hope is always, Louisa, that the dilly-dally that we dance at Ghent will be concluded soon. And when it is, I will at last be able to ask you and Charles to leave St. Petersburg and meet me in Paris.
Mr. Clay, do you need assistance?
Pray don't trouble yourself, sir. This is not the first time I've come to bed with the help of the banister.
No, sir, nor the first time you have come to bed at the same hour at which I have arisen.
I've disturbed your morning labors. My apologies.
That is not what is important, Mr. Clay. What is important is that we remain vigilant and sharp-eyed for this enterprise we are attempting to conclude.
You fear I shall not have my wits about me. A few hours sleep, and I'll be as sharp as a Yankee.
I do not doubt that, Mr. Clay. I hope you will forgive my concern.
I'm obliged for it, sir. Good night, Mr. Adams.
Good morning, Mr. Clay.
We've heard from Monroe. Fort McHenry is held and the British have retired from Baltimore.
McDonough has won for us on Champlain.
And the invasion of New York was turned back at Plattsburgh.
Wait till Lord Gambier hears that.
There's more. The attack on Lake Erie has been thoroughly repulsed. You said only the hand of heaven would help us.
Yes, the British may have played their delaying game too long.
I wouldn't bet on that too heavily, sir. The British have petitioned their beloved Duke of Wellington to take command of their army in our country.
Should he consent to accept the post, we confidently expect his sword to carve enough meat off the Yankee turkey so that there will be nothing but bones brought to the table at Ghent.
It is with deep regret that I inform you. The Duke of Wellington has refused to assume command of our forces in the United States. In His Grace's words, "In my opinion, there can be no satisfactory military conclusion to the American campaign. My best and earnest advice is to settle this on the basis of status quo before the war began."
Christmas Eve, 1814. The Treaty of Ghent, ending the War of 1812, is signed. It resolves no real issues, settles none of the disputed points. But in winning little, the United States gains much. The treaty signifies that this country is not merely a cluster of former rebellious colonies calling themselves states, but a sovereign nation. 31 years after John Adams signed the Treaty of Paris, his son signs the Treaty of Ghent. Paris. During the 100 days between Napoleon's return from Elba and his final defeat at Waterloo, John Quincy and Louisa Catherine are reunited.
Papa!
Charles. Let me see you. I can't believe how you've grown.
Bonjour, John.
Louisa.
Hold me.
Oh, Mom, tell me about snowdrifts and Peter digging the carriage out with a shovel.
What, on the trip?
It was so cold our food was frozen.
Like Mrs. Madison's iced cream.
And tell me about the coachman stealing the silver and all our money and running away, and you being sick in Strasbourg.
Now, that was nothing. I swear it, John, just exhaustion. Those 6 weeks traveling made St. Petersburg a very pleasant memory. Well, John, one of the boys. You've heard from Massachusetts, haven't you?
Yes, and they are well.
Well, let me read their letters.
In a moment. Entree. I have asked the concierge to serve dinner as soon as you arrive.
Will it be hot?
It will be just as you wanted. I've even remembered all of your favorite victuals. And there is wine.
Oh.
That same wine we had so often at Rumyantse's.
John, where are our son's letters?
A toast.
Let me read the letters, John.
To our life, as it begins again, to the court of St. James.
A toast to them. After all the pain they've caused us.
You must forget that pain now. It would not be proper for the next minister to Great Britain.
Great Britain? We're going to live there, too?
Yes. And you will like it much better than Russia. There, the boys speak English. I've only just been told privately. I've written my mother and instructed her to put the boys on the first ship to Europe.
Oh, John.
And so, after so very much, we will all be together again. In my way, Louisa. I am weeping too. Grace, O Lord, for what we are about to receive, we humbly thank